Good evening. Welcome to the Granville County Board of Commissioners, Monday, May 1st, 2023 County Commissioners meeting. Welcome. Ms. Hammond, could you please, correction, Pastor Herman, would you please lead us in a prayer, please?
Yes, sir. Lord, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for the opportunity that we have to be here. Lord, we pray for the business that is conducted tonight. We pray that you would guide the representatives of this county. Lord, that you would just bless them in a mighty way as they serve you in the position that they're in. Lord, help them to act with integrity, with kindness, Lord, with peace in their hearts, seeking to do your will and seeking to do what will be best for this community and this county. We thank you again for the time that we have to be here. We pray that you would just be honored and glorified in all that's said and done tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Herman. Ms. Hammond.
Please stand. Say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. You've had an opportunity to review the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Williford with the motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Zelotes J with a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. This evening, we want to honor the memory of Pete Avert, a commissioner that served our county for 30 years, a pillar of the community and a good man. Is there anyone right now that would like to speak on behalf of Pete? Any of the commissioners? Commissioner Smith, would you like to go?
Let me face this well then. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for inviting me to come, and I was glad to come in. I met Commissioner Karen coming in. I said, this is like old times, but I didn't have a book. Thank you, and I got permission to leave short after this. But anyway, we are here tonight, and we certainly all remember Willie Earl, but we all lovingly and affectionately know him as Pete Avert. And the many, many hours and devoted that he spent not only to his district but the entire county. And we want to thank the family, because the family comes along with the elected officials. And we know you sacrificed. It was many a night, Ms. Avert, I know you were alone, supper by yourself, and weekends gone, the people's in meetings and things. And we just said thank you to the entire family. And we certainly all love Pete, and we know he did a tremendous assets to Granville County. So many things that he did, and to be honest with you, so many things that Pete did, no one really realized he did, because he did it in a quiet and chipping away manner, making the quality of life for everyone in our county that much better. So with that being said, I just thank you for the privilege of coming tonight, Mr. Chairman and family. We know we love you, we love Pete. And I could just tell so many war stories, and but I'll leave them off. Some of them were good, some of them were kind of crazy, but we'll leave those war stories off. But again, just thank you so much, and we all know that Pete left us a life, a legacy that we all need to live up to. Because he loved not only the Lord, but he loved his family in all of Granville County. And thank y'all so much. Thank you.
Commissioner J, if you come up here so you can. Ms. Averett's sitting down here, so that's why we're doing the presentation down here.
I'd just like to say, some call him Pete, some call him Willie. I call him Uncle Pete. The first time I met, Pete, Uncle Pete, was my first meeting on the Board of County Commissioners. Somebody had told him that my name was Zero. And the first thing he asked me, what is your name? And I told him Zelotes. He said, what? I told him Zelotes. He said, what do they call you? I says, there's a lady, Miss Fraser always called me, she couldn't pronounce my name, she always called me Zero. He said, well, that's what I'm gonna call you from now on, is Zero. That's what he always called me. And me and my family always called him Uncle Pete. Because he would call me and said that I got to go do this for the county. Be ready. Be ready, what we going to do? You know, Pete have, like Commissioner Smith said, that, you know, Pete always did something other when people were asleep. Pete is all on the phone doing something for Graham County. Pete knew everybody nationwide. Nationwide, he knew. And what he needed to get done, he can get it done. From all 100 counties, they knew Pete Avery. Nationwide, at our national association, every president that we had during his tenure, they knew him. They knew Pete. And anything that he asked for, he got it. Pete was a man that loved Graham County to his heart. And he when he passed away, he was still loving Graham County. Because a few days before he passed away, he called me, Zero, what's going on with Graham County? And he was concerned about everybody in Graham County. Pete is up there looking down on us now and making sure that us board do what's right for Graham County. Because, you know, he was the type of person, I got to tell this though, of Pete, then I'm going to sit down. Pete knew that I was scared to ride a plane. And he had told Bobby to make sure I go with them to the convention. So when he got on the plane, he was sitting beside me, and we got around the runway, and on the track, and you notice it said boom, 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 boom. Pete looked at me and said, Zero, we got a flat tire. and we got to get out and help change the flat tire. I told him, I said, if I get out, I'm not getting back home. But that's the type of person was Pete. Peter always was doing something else to look out for Graham County. And we miss him. We gonna trust him. I know y'all miss him, but I miss him just as much as y'all miss him. And Graham County miss him too. And he made a mark on Graham County. Mama, you keep looking up. Pete is in your heart. And to the family, that he's still with us. Think about the good things that he always said. I always think about the good things that people that said or done and keep me laughing in a sad time. So keep looking up. And thank you for sharing Pete with us. I know you stayed so long, some nights that you was alone and Pete was gone and Pete was doing work for the county. And we thank you for sharing him and part of your time with us. Thank you.
Down to the
I knew Pete from a little bit different angle. I grew up in Gravel County and grew up in the Wilton community. So this is the first time, after Pete passed away, this is the first time I've ever known Wilton community without Pete in it. He was there. And age-wise, I fall just shy of Tommy and just a little bit ahead of Jerome. So we all knew each other growing up. And I've known Miss Eula for forever, as long as I can remember. And I didn't follow local politics back then. I didn't follow Pete's career in politics. Didn't figure there's need to, because we all knew Pete. We knew he was going to look after us and he was going to do the best he could for our community. And I didn't know how much he did, not only for our community, but for the entire county and for the Carter Council of Government, what he did there, helped start carts. If you talk to him, you still wouldn't know it unless you asked him. Pete was not a person that bragged. He didn't boast about his accomplishments. But if you wanted to know and you asked, he would tell you. And he would tell you everything that was going on. So, you know, I love Pete. Thought the world of him. And it's great that we're here to honor him tonight and honor his accomplishments. Many of them I'm just learning about now. And we thank you so much for sharing Pete with the county. I knew he was a pillar of the community. He was a pillar of the Pleasant Grove Baptist Church, and knew him to be a great family man. We can rest assured he's celebrating victim with him.
Any other questions?
So I'll open with, I beat Pete, but if I'd have known what I know now, I probably wouldn't have done it. It was not because it was because I was young and thought I knew everything. I still do. I'm still young and know everything. But when I see a carts bus on the road right now, I think Pete Averett. And the blessing in our communities, when I ride through Wilton and I see an EMS station, I think Pete Averett. The legacy that man left, your loved one, your husband, your father, your amazing grandfather, great-grandfather, I don't see any babies. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I hope and pray that my legacy will be a tenth of what he has left this county. And when I first got elected, there was people chiding me about Pete hadn't done this and Pete hadn't done that. I come to find out later, it wasn't in Pete's control. People thought it was, but it wasn't in his control. And I hope and pray that you all know, in my heart, there was never a slight amount of animus on either side. And I wish we could return to a day where people didn't, in a skinny minute, say, just because you're elected, you're a corrupt person. And I can tell you here, standing here today, Pete Averett was not a corrupt person because he was an elected official. He was a great man, and I hope you all know that, and I'm sure you do. And I hold him in my heart. I'm not from here, but I came here, I found it as quick as I could, and I love this place. My baby's from here. And I know that y'all have roots in the soil, like I do now, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for lending you Pete Averett.
Mr. Wren, you have any comments?
I'd just say I worked with him for many years and thought the world of him. He taught me a lot, and he was a really great man. Spirit. I had a beer in the freezer for him to give him this year. Never got it to him, so I apologize for that.
Ms. Euler, just come here, please. Tommy and Jerome. I'd like to read something to you. As genuine as this family looks, they really are. It truly is a treasure, grandma treasure here. And it's a privilege to represent you, but more importantly, it's a privilege to be a brother and a sister to you all. Board of Commissioners, proclamation in honor and memory of Commissioner Willie Earl P. Avery. Whereas the Board of Commissioners of Gravel County and its citizens were saddened by the passing of Willie Earl P. Avery on February 16, 2023, and whereas Willie Earl Avery, known as Pete, by most served selflessly as a Gravel County Commissioner from 1980 to 2010, 30 years. He served as a chairman from 84 to 85, 2002 to 2003. He served on the Car Council of Governments, but his main baby was the Car Area Transportation Authority, known as CART. And whereas in 1983, Pete helped jumpstart the CART program, a public transportation system providing scheduled and reserved rides that are convenient, safe, affordable, and dependable to take citizens to medical appointments, shopping areas, pharmacies, work, and just about anywhere. Pete served as chairman of the board of directors of CART through 2010. This program still exists today, and you best believe Pete, although retired, was at the ribbon cutting of the new CART building on 1575 Ross Mill Road in Henderson on September 29, 2022. Whereas Pete, a lifelong resident and farmer of Granville County, also worked in construction, and while working on a special project for NASA on Wallace Island in Chicotee, Virginia, he met, say it again, Chicotee. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Now, Robbie, was me. Thank you. He meant the love of his life, the love of you, and who knows how to pronounce that name. They were married for 7 years and made Granville County their home. From that union were born 4 sons, 6 grandchildren, and 17 great-grandchildren. Now, whereas Pete loved farming and his sons helped work the farm until they graduated high school. In 1968, Pete won the award for the top feeder pig producer in Granville County. He also spent several years as a grader of the tobacco market. And whereas Pete loved Granville County and its citizens, he was one of the founding members of the Lord Granville Agricultural Affairs Association. His nature to serve also led him to join his local Lions Club. And whereas Pete loved his God, his family, and community, he farmed and worked with his family and was a faithful member of Pleasant Grove Baptist Church. Pete created loving memories and a legacy for generations to come. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Granville County Board of Commissioners respectfully honors the life and memory of our fellow commissioner, Willie Earl P. Avery, and expresses sincere sympathy and condolences to the entire Avery family during this time of great loss. Be it further proclaimed that we hereby express on behalf of the citizens of Granville County deep appreciation, gratitude for the gifts of time, tenacity, and commitment given by Willie Earl P. Avery in carrying out the duties of this board. Avery family, thank you. Thank you for all you give to the county, all your sacrifices, and the family, and for lasting legacy. You know, we don't always have to agree with somebody to love them. And Pete worked really hard and appreciate it. I didn't get to know him until later, much later in life, but we're one of the family, and it truly is an honor and privilege. So thank you.
excuse me, let me read one thing before you speak. This is for Commissioner Tony Cozart, who had a death in the family, and he's unable to be here tonight. And he worked with Pete and loved him very much. The opportunity to serve with Commissioner Pete Avert was a very rewarding experience. I witnessed early how dedicated he was to attending meeting after meeting and enjoying every minute of it. He was a strong voice of support for services in our county, particularly law enforcement, courts, fire departments, EMS, COG, and our schools. Commissioner Avert was so committed that he got involved in our state and national associations. He found a way to balance being a loving husband, father, and work responsibilities and many demanding county matters. As we returned from the trip to a legislative conference in Washington, D.C., Pete told me, "I just love representing the people." In my mind, this sums up what motivated Pete. He worked so hard for 30 years. I saw in the Commissioner Avert a man who truly loved public service. His untiring service inspired me when it seemed as though we were bouncing from one challenge to another. I'll be eternally grateful for the opportunity to serve with him. Tony Cozart.
Well, I just say that I appreciate this honor. Dad loved this county, as most of you know. He loved the people. He loved people. And you know what? We missed him at home sometimes, but we knew he was doing what was good for us as well as anybody else. We gained from him being a county commissioner of the family. And we appreciate y'all being his family, as a large number of families, county commissioners, and the whole county. I mean, Dad didn't get into the office of county commissioner by himself, did he? You guys supported him, the county supported him, and we appreciate that. A farmer hadn't been nowhere and done much of anything, but he wanted to do for this county the best he could. And he traveled a lot through this county. He'd never made some little trip by himself, but he got to see a lot of things and do a lot of things, and he just loved serving this county. And he loved his church and his church family. He loved his Lord. And we are so thankful for our Father. And we know where he's at today. He's watching me stand here shedding tears. But he's a happy person. And he's waiting for us. He's waiting for Mom. And we'll be there one day. All of you going to be called, you know, we're going to follow that same path. So I hope everyone's prepared for it. God bless you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have some more presentations now. Animal Control Advisory Committee, Ms. Hinman, if you would, and I'll join you.
All right.
These presentations that you're going to observe now are for members of our community that serve on various boards, some for a significant period of time, and we want to publicly acknowledge their service and their commitment to the county. Matt.
I think Dr. Diana Dudley. Join us. we were teasing earlier that I couldn't remember my kid's name. So she told me she was Diane, and I was like, oh, okay. I'd like to present this to you. Thank you very, very much. Right here. We're going to get pictures and we're going to give you some more.
Dr. Trudy Bowman.
Trudy Bowman? I did see her here. What am I saying? I didn't see her here. You guys, I missed you for 2 meetings and I already can't remember what you look like. Those were awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you. So,
And Abigail Cronshaw.
Dr. Abigail Cronshaw. I can't pronounce anybody's last name, only the first name. Amy. Thank you, sweetie.
Dean Richards.
And Mr. Green. You. Are you Dean? Yeah. What did you do? Let me tell you what you did.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you to this. Oh, Jerry. Jerry, I'm sorry. Jerry. Come on, Jerry. I just want to tell you, when I was newly elected and I got on the animal control board, they told me this is the worst board to ever be on. All they do is pick at each other. And I never saw it. These were the best people ever. Well, maybe, no, I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. No, this was the best board ever. They are really, really awesome, and you are going to be greatly missed. But thank you for doing your share, and I wish everybody out there would pick a committee and do what these wonderful people have done to make our county a Pete Avery county and make it better. So thank you for doing this and being here for us. Thank you very much. I can't say this enough.
So y'all now pose for a picture for you.
Oh, now we want a picture. Here, mister. Did you get this, Terry? Got it, okay. Thank you.
Board of Adjustment. Right here.
Oh, yeah.
John Curran.
You want me to step here?
You're welcome to
Which one is it?
the planning board.
Oh, this is the one I never had to go to.
Mr. John Curran, thank you, sir, for your outstanding service on the planning board.
Thank you.
Tommy Hopgood.
And this is for his service on the Board of Adjustment.
Thank you on that one. That one I understand, a very hard one.
Thank you very much.
Somebody want to? Probably wrong.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Taking the time to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Salute. No, you're good. Mr. Dennis Daniel here, or Miss Sarah Mayfield.
Miss Sarah Mayfield, please.
That's the roots we're calling.
Miss Sarah Mayfield, how do you know her?
She borrows his car every once in a while.
1 year, 1 day, they're older than I am.
Okay. There you go. And this is for the
She looks a lot better than you do.
I don't know. They say we look alike, I don't know.
I think she's cute.
You think she could? You know, this is a great honor to do this. This is the first time, Martin Day, this is the first time I ever presented her something of because Sarah always got in trouble. And she, ever since the day when I became county commissioner,
Yeah, I don't see that as Stan.
she knew that I would, I put on the committee for the summer, get word me there, because at 1 o'clock in the morning, she was thinking something, I was just sitting up, thinking something, she was fussing me about it, and knew I had to be to work at 4 o'clock. We know that you will still be working on the board with people relations, but due to your health, causing you not to, but we recognize you and appreciate the service that you did. I truly appreciate the service that you do personally. I appreciate the service that you run the projects on human relations and other committees. This says certificate of recognition presented to Sarah Mayfield, a recognition of 7 years of outstanding service on a Graham County human relations. Love you.
And your coin. So let's get you downstairs safely. Oh, wait, got it. Hang on.
Not worrying, man.
It's me. You gotta go down these steps. Where are you at, big brother? Help her get down those steps.
So we're gonna go on public comments here, so you're gonna be seated. Just give me an email address. Don't leave your comments, you may email your comments. Email them to us, provide them to us at commissioners@granvillecounty.org. Commissioners@granvillecounty.org. So if you have written comments, you don't have any speak on, and you want to provide those comments to us, you can email them to that email address, and we'll receive those and be part of the record. Thank you.
While you're getting ready to sit down, Miss Everett, I did think of something I wanted to say. I never got to meet Mr. Everett until I went to one COG meeting, and that somebody introduced me for 2 seconds. He goes, "Oh, I've heard your name a lot." So I heard his name going back and forth to trips, but I didn't know who he was, but he knew me.
Okay, as previously stated, you'll be given 3 minutes. With 30 seconds to go, you'll get a yellow card. And at the end of it, you'll get a red card. Please end your comments at that point. You may share your time with someone if you'd like, and the overall period is limited to 30 minutes. And we'll start at 7:34. So with that said, are you good? Good, they're good. Yeah. Thank you. When you come up, please give us your name and your address, please. Nathan Frund.
My name is Nathan Front. Can you guys hear me?
Danielle?
Yep. My name's Nathan Front. I live at 3257 Tump Wilkins Road. You go ahead.
Pull that closer to you.
Okay. How's that?
There you go.
Okay. 12 years ago, my wife and I found a place on Tump Wilkins Road that reminded us of our grandfather's farms. Since then, we've conserved and amended soil, improved timber stand, created wildlife habitat, promoted wildflowers for pollinators, planted an orchard, created a garden, have continuously cleaned up trash along the road. It sounds so strange to me rattling off our labors as accomplishments, but I feel that I must to make this point. I am opposed to the STEM ETJ because I would not have moved here if it had already been implemented. If I'm not incentivized to move here, then who is? Those whose way of life is putting their own skin in the game to voluntarily improve what they have by working with what they have, rather than fundamentally changing it for others. There is one effort that I haven't mentioned. I have voted for people here tonight, and that too can be amended. But by the way, beyond our land, we found better neighbors than we could have ever hoped for. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, sir. Mark Griffin.
Good evening. My name is Mark Griffin, and I live at 1629 Tally Ho Road in Oxford, which is right on the outside of STEM city limits. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight, and thank you for everybody that's came and shown up and supported trying to ban the STEM ETJ. I want to tell you a little story. When I was a young man, grew up on a farm, worked hard. My family, we hustled. It's the only way we had. We grew everything we ate, and we raised tobacco, and me and my sister and brother. My mother and father worked that farm and carved out a way of life. At the time, I couldn't wait to get away from there. Couldn't wait. I always wanted to go where other things were. And then when I got away, I couldn't wait to get back. And by the grace of God and for the thankfulness of my mother and father, I got to come back. Got to build a house there and a home and raise a family there. Worked outside in public service for over 35 years. And after I retired, all I wanted to do was come home, run my little family farm, and be there with my family. I've got a lot of good neighbors and friends that live around where I do. And all I want to do is preserve the way of life that I've had and I've enjoyed. And I think that's what most of these people want too. You know, I ask you tonight to search your soul. And I look every one of you in the eye and ask you to do the right thing for these people of STEM. They're hard-working people. They hadn't asked for this. We're not looking for this. We've had a lot of people move into our community and we've welcomed them. And for the life of me, I can't understand why, once they get there, they want to change the way of life that we've become so accustomed to and we've reared. They want big-time things happening, but yet and still, they want this to happen and they don't enjoy the rural way of life anymore. So I'm asking you to help us preserve our way of life in our little community, because that's what we want. We want to pay our taxes, be good citizens, go to work, come home, raise our families, and live. And that's all we're looking for. And again, I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Just 1 second, please. I'm just pausing for the photographer.
He's going to stay there.
I know, I don't want anyone to walk in front of him. You good? Patrice Beck.
I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. My name is Patrice Beck. I live at 1690 Middle Springs Drive, STEM. I have lived in Granville County for 43 years. I have always lived in the county. If I had wanted to move to the city, I would have done it 43 years ago. I have 10 plus acres of land. I have a big garden, tractors, boats, chickens, dogs, And I would prefer and want to continue to live like that. And I ask that you remember Pete Averett was from the county, his family lives in the county, and he would not want to see other people move into the city if they did not want to. I yield the rest of my time to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Tommy Beck.
He popped his ankle coming in.
That's the bear trap over there. My name's Tommy Beck. I live off 1690 Middle Springs Road. It's a little side street off of Tump Wilkins. They're trying to put us in the city for what reason, I don't know. They don't have nothing to offer. Part-time police, part-time fire department. What else do we need? They done took our our postal service and moved it up to the end of the road. We don't even come down the road anymore. And they putting up signs, street signs on our road. It's not even in the city limits. And that's some of STEM's people, not y'all. But I got 11 acres there. It is for sale. I keep getting phone calls. They want to buy it. I will sell it. But they got to have a checkbook ready. But my land butts up against the interstate. What good is it? Half of it's swamp. I don't need the extra tax money. Now, on a side note, remember the Avery family? Good folks, good friends. Pete was a great guy. Thank you.
Thank you. Christy Campbell. I missed her.
Hey, I'm Christy Wilkins Campbell. I live at 3108 Tump Wilkins Road in STEM, and I'm opposed to the ETJ. I've been on the same property all my life. I was born and raised there. My dad was born on a farm on Tump Wilkins Road. My great-grandfather was Alan Cephas, Tump Wilkins. He purchased several hundred acres of land, maybe late 1800s, early 1900s, I'm not sure. He bought enough land to give to all of his sons so they could have a farm and raise their families. People are still farming that land. It's been passed down from generation to generation. My son, my nephew, my niece, and her future husband all have plans for this land. They are already in process of making things happen and bringing the farm back to life. We use the land for food. We rely on hunting, growing our own vegetables. We buy very little at the grocery store, only buy what we have to have. We have freezers of food that we get from our own land. The ETJ puts our way of life in jeopardy. We also have a business, but based on STEM's ETJ future plans, the vision would be our work trucks would not be able to be parked where we want to park in our own driveway. They would have to be in a garage where you can't see them because they're work trucks. We would be eventually expected to hook up to water and sewer. I'd rather use an outhouse than have city water and sewer. I'm sorry. The town of STEM is telling me what I'm going to have to do with my money. So certain people that have moved into that area that want to accomplish their dreams, they're wanting me to pay for it. They're telling me, you're going to have to park your work vehicle in a garage. You're going to have to hook up to city water and sewer. They're telling me what I'm going to be able to do on my own land that's been in my family for generations and generations, where the people telling me this have only been here a few years. They're not from here. They have no roots here. We don't really get a vote with the ETJ. There would be one person representing all of these families to speak for us. We don't have a say-so if this passes. And I have to ask you, how would you feel if you, let's say you have a pond and you have a beaver destroying your property?
Thank you, ma'am.
I have copies.
You can give the copies, okay. Just hand them to the clerk or the county manager. Thank you, ma'am. Sarah Beth Dermer.
Can I see my time to someone else?
You want to extend it to her?
Sure.
Okay. So, Ms. Campbell, you have an additional 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. The town of STEM wants to make our area a cookie cutter area, replica of other cities and places. If the people that are wanting to do this did not like the area and wanted to paint it, why did they move here? We like the way we live. That's why we choose to live where we do. Back in the 80s, STEM tried to annex the areas 1 mile outside from the city limits. It failed. I remember my daddy, Mr. Griffin, and others fighting this back then. My brother, 15 years ago, was forced to sell some of the family land that he had to protect his home from the developers of Prestwick who were coming into his back door, literally within feet, to build Prestwick. They didn't want the land that they forced him to sell them to. They sold it to somebody else. But they wanted to have their way. As a matter of fact, the person who bought the land is here tonight fighting the CTJ as well. We've lost land to the PSNC gas pipeline that took several acres right through the middle of our property, where now we're told what we can do on that strip where the gas line goes through. I've lost timber to Progress Energy because they had to cut timber away from power lines. The very next year they come in and they sprayed chemicals to kill the undergrowth. Well, guess what? It also killed some of our chickens. We didn't get compensated. We had no say-so. We've continued to lose bits and pieces of our land that's been in our family through not having any choices, not having votes, not having say-sos, because we have been told, even though we're paying for the land, we pay for taxes, somebody gets hurt on our land, we're the ones that will get sued. Nobody pays that for us. STEM is not going to take responsibility for paying our taxes that we pay every year. They're not going to pay our insurance that we have to carry on our land. I have to do that. I have to fix things that are messed up. I had to eat the cost of my chickens that died. And I'm tired of people having a say-so and controlling what I can do on what I'm responsible for. I pay for the land, but everybody else is having a say-so. We don't have a vote in this. We come to you guys to ask for a vote.
Thank you, ma'am. Susan Rigsby. Ingrid Darius.
Good evening. My name is Ingrid Darius. I live at 3226 Tump Wilkins Road. I have a little different story. I'm not born from here. I came from that dreaded city, New York. Lived there my whole life. My husband and I worked to have a 40 by 60 plot of land. My husband was in the service, came home with Parkinson's from Vietnam, and all he wanted was to move where he could live not next to the neighbor. We moved here 16 years ago, and now you're trying to make us go back to New York. You don't realize what you will lose by putting this in. Your water will be filthy. Your animals that you're feeding will have chemicals. It is a different life than what you are used to, being right next door to your neighbor, where you can't talk to your husband, you can't kiss your husband without somebody seeing it through a window, because you'd be so close. We moved here, I look out and I have wood ducks nesting in my trees. I have ducks on the pond. I have deer running across my property every morning. And my 4 dogs love the freedom. They don't have to be on a leash. They don't have to be told by a neighbor, your dog's barking. You will lose what you have here if you allow this to go through. We don't want it. As a previous New Yorker, I don't want it. I want to be able to look out on my pond and not have to hear my neighbor next door to me having a fight with her husband. I plead for you to consider the people of Granville County, because from the minute I walked onto that property, I was from Granville County. I love every piece of dirt on that land. Every one of my neighbors. I have never been so acknowledged by lovely people that live in Granville County. And this is coming from a New Yorker, the dreaded persons that are coming here. So just realize, please, you've lived here your whole lives. The money counts, I guess, but it's not going to count to these people. Thank you very much for your time.
Chief Darius.
Hello, my name is Keith Darius. I live at 3226 Tump Wilkins. Came here completely intending to just yield my vote, but I heard everybody speak of the great councilman that lived here and read his bio while I was waiting. He was a farmer. He was a great man. He loved his family, raised people, built homes on his farm. And my dad came here to do the same thing. And I've traveled, I've gone to England, lived in Chicago, lived in many places, always wondering where I was going until I came here. And everybody here has made me feel at home. Never felt like a stranger to anybody. And it seemed like now they're trying to take that away and just tell us what to do with our own property. And it's not right. It's not right that there's not enough, they say there's not enough water to support the people they want here. It's not even people here that are doing it. It's lawyers from New York and stuff. So defend yourselves. Don't let it happen. Thank you very much.
Gregory Brown.
Hello, my name is Gregory Brown. I live at 3223 Tump Wilkins Road. My family and I have lived there for 7 years, and we came there to start a life and make a way of life, a living. And now the town of Stem is telling me that I'm going to have to go through them in order to do that. And we don't like it. We don't want it to go through. And I yield my time.
Thank you, sir. Amber Carey.
Good evening, Amber Carey of 2030 Carewoods Drive in STEM. I'm here tonight in opposition of STEM's ETJ. Many of us from this area currently enjoy rural life. It's why we live there. We raise crops and we raise livestock. We hunt and fish on our properties. Some of us build race cars. Some of us enjoy target practice. We have bonfires on our land. Our kids ride bikes and they play in the woods. At night, we can see the stars, and in the morning, we can hear the birds. We enjoy nature, and we enjoy life at a slower pace, and we enjoy the privacy and the freedom that rural living affords us. As a landowner in the proposed ETJ, there is no benefit to being included in this ETJ. In fact, all we see coming with this is restrictions on private landowners and power to restrict coming from a town council in which we cannot even vote for. We're told things like the ETJ will protect STEM from being overcome by Butner's ETJ, or this is to protect from overdevelopment, when in fact, we know that more development, such as subdivisions, means more tax revenue for the town of STEM, because these subdivisions are being voluntarily annexed into the town. And we know that tax revenue is exactly what is needed for STEM's 2040 plan to come to fruition. And so I could talk on and on, but I only get 3 minutes, and what I really want to hammer home is that a handful of unelected people, and I say unelected because we did not elect them, we cannot elect them, a handful of unelected people should not be able to dictate the future of a whole community. We are asking you to please vote no to STEM's ETJ. Please be our voice. Thank you.
Floyd Addis.
Good evening, Floyd Addis at 1115 Dovefield Lane. It's a pleasure to be here tonight in the company of several other members of the Brassfield Communities Alliance. We're here strictly tonight to support our new friends and allies in Western Granville County. We're happy to be here to help you. Your fight is our fight. And the only point I want to make to the commissioners and to everybody at large is that I understand that legislation is working its way through the Senate, the state Senate right now.
Floyd, could you please move the mic closer to your mouth, please?
Sorry, I thought my time in the military gave me a voice that was commanding. At any rate, I believe it's Senate Bill 675, and my Western friends can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but it would have the effect, if passed, of eliminating XJT entirely in Granville County. I hope that the commissioners will join us in informing Mr. Winslow and Mr. Sossanen that we would very much like to see this shepherded through the House and passed for the protection of our non-municipal residents of Granville County. I yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Floyd Addis.
I'm sorry, telephone? Did you pick up the telephone up there?
Yeah.
Could I have it back? Sorry. I apologize. It's a nice phone.
Okay, that's the solved crime, so here we go. David Carey.
My name is David Carey. I live at 2030 Carewoods Drive. I'm also opposed to the STEM ETJ. I'm not the best with my words, but I'm going to try and speak. I've lived in STEM my whole life, born and raised STEM. And I've always counted myself thankful when I drive to Holly Springs, Zebulon, Youngsville, Wake Forest, because the last 30 years they have exploded to the point of I hate going to them. It's traffic, everything is a nightmare, and Granville County has stayed true. And I see that changing right now, and this ETJ is part of it. It gives STEM the way to build these $500,000 homes in the outlying communities and invite them in. I oppose it. I want to keep my way of life. I'm Granville County through and through. I love this county. My kids are born here. They don't want to leave here because they love living in the country. Their little city friends don't understand how they get to do what they get to do, and it's because of where we live. And that's changing, and I'm here to fight and stop it and keep it for my kids. I'm 5 generations on Carewoods Drive. My kids are the 5th generation that's lived there. And I wanted them to have the opportunity to raise their kids there if they want to. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you, sir. Michaela Wilkins. And we're almost getting toward our 30-minute mark, so if the next 3 speakers can limit their comments to 2 minutes, we can get everyone an opportunity to speak tonight.
Good evening. Can you hear me? I'm Michaela Wilkins, and I live at 3145 Tump Wilkins Drive. Tump Wilkins Road, my goodness, I'm nervous. I've lived here my whole life. Terry Wilkins is my father. My family has been here for over 100 years. I just inherited with my brother 60 acres from my grandmother, and I want nothing more than this ETJ not to happen. I want to leave this land to my children and my children's children so that they can grow up the same way I did. I want freedom and the ability to choose what I am doing on my property without undue influence from people that don't own the land, don't maintain the land, and gain nothing but my tax dollars for what they want to do. I was educated in Durham. I went to school in Raleigh, and I hated those places, and I want nothing more than where I love to not look anything like them. We like our rural way of life. We are self-sufficient. We take care of each other and everything that we need, and I believe that we should have the ability to decide what we do on our property. So I'm asking you, I am begging you to please vote no to this ETJ. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Wilkins. And I can't help but to look at you and see the resemblance of your father. Yes, ma'am. Mark Coates. And after Mark, it is Sherry. Would you, he can have 3 or you can have 2 each?
It's not gonna take me that long.
Okay.
As far as the ETJ goes, to me, I mean, it's like something in a communist country. They can tell you what you can do, when you can do it. They're gonna bring in bukus of homes and put them all over us. That means people that's got shooting ranges behind the house, you can't shoot the gun anymore if you're in the city. But I just want to let y'all know that the biggest of y'all are elected officials, right? Do they vote to get y'all into jobs you're in?
Yes, they did.
Okay, well, I just want you to know, I live at 3127 Brogdon Road. And there tends to be a lot of big signs out there from time to time. Y'all vote this ETJ crap down. I'll put y'all, next time you go to be elected, I'll have you pay, and I'll pay for the stuff myself. But if you go against us and you bring it on in, don't let your wife go by and see it, because it ain't gonna be pretty. Thank you so much.
Appreciate the warning. I got a yard too. I can put signs up too. So, thank you. Ms. Coates, please.
That was my husband. I live on 3127 Brogdon Road, and we raise donkeys and goats, and we love the place. Brogdon Road, it normally wakes me up about 4:35 in the morning with the traffic. So it's picking up more and more. The more and more we develop, the worse it's going to get. So sometimes when we go out 8 o'clock in the morning, it's already starting to get, more and more traffic. But I just want to say, I do appreciate the attention. I had Jerome, I worked with him at Nortel. I had 41 years of the manufacturing, and I've seen the politics, and I do appreciate the attention that you guys have given all of us. I really do, because we've seen it all with that many years and seeing our work go out of the country. So just thank y'all, and we sure would want to see more development coming in. Thank you.
Okay, we got it in on time, so thank you very much. And again, we appreciate all your comments. The matter has not come before our board at this time, just so that you know, and you're always welcome to come to the board and make your public comments. And again, I welcome you as well to email your comments so they can be part of the record as well. And that would be very helpful when the moment comes to review the matter. With that being said, we're going to move on to our county manager. His fiscal year presentation 2023 to 2024. Mr. Drew Cummings are no longer new, but fairly new county manager, and it's all yours, Drew.
Okay, we're just going to shuffle out. We're going to stay.
Mr. Cummings, we're going to pause just briefly and allow folks to clear out and get settled. Again, I'd like to thank the Averitt family for being here tonight. And Pastor Herman, thank you as well.
Yeah, have a good night. I want some. He gives a message recommended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioners, and thank you also to the citizens and members of the public brave enough to stick it out through this presentation. And before I launch in, I also want to take a minute to reflect on that remarkable career of public service of Pete Averitt. It's hard to really imagine. I mean, 30 years on this board, 3 decades on this board, and I'm sure service before that and some service after that as well. Truly remarkable. On that note, it's a privilege to be working for you and for the citizens of this great county. It's a privilege to be entrusted with the management of the county and this budget development process. Thank you for the guidance and feedback you have given me to help me do my job. While this may be the manager's recommended budget, it is meant to reflect the board's interests and policy guidance, and I believe that this proposed budget does that. People often say that a budget is a moral document, that we show what we truly value by what we're willing to spend Granville County taxpayer dollars on, and I share that view. This budget isn't perfect, but it is our best effort this month and this year, and we work continuously to try to improve upon it as an expression of the cares and priorities and responsibilities of this county. Some of these responsibilities are set out by state statute, at least in a general way, but even in those cases, we seek to do better than those basic requirements. We seek to provide the best service possible to the residents of Granville County. August or September of last year would have been great, but I do thank you for hiring me in October and giving me at least 6.5 months to internalize many of the operational details and financial commitments of the county before presenting this budget. I also want to thank Mike Feltz, former county manager, and Doug Logan, the interim county manager, for both being available during these first months to answer both obvious and obscure questions about any number of county functions. Doug in particular came in several hours a day, 2 or 3 days a week during my first several weeks, and I'm not sure it was all my questions that
eventually gave him heart trouble, but it might have been. Before I launch in, I also want to thank several staff in particular for their Herculean efforts during this budget preparation process. First and foremost, I want to thank Assistant County Manager Karina Weichel, without whom there is almost no chance that this budget would have been ready to present to you this evening. She is a consummate professional, extremely organized, has a memory like a steel trap, and she cares about this organization. She has been my right hand these first 6.5 months, and never more so than with the development of this budget. Karina, thank you. I would like to thank Deborah Weary, clerk to the board, and also my assistant for helping to make sure all of the needed budget meetings got scheduled, that everyone knew when they needed to be rescheduled, and for tipping me off every once in a while with insider information that could only be gained by decades of paying close attention. She carries a great load for this board, for me, and thus for this community, and it is remarkable the way that she manages to do all of that with such gentleness and good humor and grace. I want to thank Steve McNally, our finance director, who once worked for a county manager who was himself a finance guru, but now does not. He too faced a new set of pressures and tasks with his own good humor and redoubled effort. Finally, I want to thank our departments and department heads. We took our budget development process online this year, and in addition to providing all the needed information, they had to learn quickly about our cloud-based file system, which allowed access to everyone who needed the ability to review and edit all the necessary documents. The overall process has not been without a few hiccups, but with Karina in particular riding herd on the process, I believe we have managed to bring you a superior product tonight. There is much to talk about in an $82 million budget for an organization with nearly 30 departments, hundreds of programs, and nearly 400 employees. This is a large and complex organization serving a great variety of community needs. Organizing the funding into a few dozen spreadsheets and boiling the story down into a coherent, well-organized 200-page book is a tricky task. Further reducing that story into a relatively concise PowerPoint, we'll see how concise you feel it is by the end of it, is even more challenging, and I hope I will not fail too miserably. Tonight, we'll be covering a number of major topics, including a recap of the current year budget, a review of the current year itself, this year's budget development timeline, underlying assumptions we have used for the proposed budget, a review of key revenue and expenditure trends, the principal drivers of this coming year's budget, a brief discussion of key service expansions and enhancements, and I will close with a high-level overview of the total recommended budget for next year. This current year's total approved general fund budget for the county is a little under $81 million, though some subsequent budget amendments acknowledging federal COVID funding eventually raised that total in an unusual one-time way. Commissioners kept the overall county tax rate steady at 84 cents, but also approved the creation of a new fire tax district and a fire tax of 6 cents per hundred valuation that is applied to property outside the municipalities of Oxford, Creedmoor, and Butner, which have their own professional fire service. This year's budget included nearly $1 million new dollars for Granville County Public Schools operations funding, what we often call current expense. That $1 million represented a significant portion of the new revenue we anticipated getting from sales taxes and property taxes, our two principal sources of revenue. The more than $18 million county commissioners put towards school operations this current year does not include nearly $6 million in debt service on school buildings and nearly $2 million for other capital needs at the schools. The current year's budget includes $1.6 million in additional EMS funding and a number of smaller but still significant increases for merit pay, health insurance premium increases, Vance Granville Community College, and a much-needed computer server refresh. Finally, before this past November's election, commissioners approved approximately $1 million in mid-year bonuses focused on law enforcement, but some of which also went to other county employees, perhaps helping to keep them a hair in front of inflation, and in the case of law enforcement, to make a down payment on more permanent changes to our public safety pay included in this recommended budget. This year has been the principal year in which Granville County spent funds received through the Federal American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. The county received a total of $11.7 million through this program, and in my estimation, has made a series of very wise decisions on how to spend that money. Using part of it for broadband expansion is fully in line with both federal guidance for these funds and also, and probably more importantly, very clearly and repeatedly expressed needs of members of our Granville County community. For the remaining $10 million in ARPA funds, using the revenue replacement option offered by the federal government offered us much greater flexibility, and you can see on the screen how those funds have been committed to meet critical long-term needs in the community. The commitment to make Triangle North shovel-ready with water and sewer infrastructure will help accelerate that park's transformation within this community, and investments in Granville Medical Center and new ambulances will help meet the growing and ongoing medical service needs of Granville County residents. During the current fiscal year, we have witnessed many changes and important developments in our county and within this organization. Without wanting to jinx us, I would say we appear to have largely closed the door on a multi-year worldwide epidemic of greater proportion than anyone alive has likely seen. A strongly rebounding economy is also driving inflation, and at least according to some predictions, we may be heading for another recession. We shall see. All 4 city and county manager positions in this county have turned over this year, which is quite something. And I understand, in fact, actually it happened this afternoon after I wrote these words, that we've just heard about the appointment of the new Oxford city manager. So we look forward to welcoming him. We've broken ground on what we know will be a wonderful new senior center in Stovall, and have also felt the necessary sting of closing additional public school facilities to adapt to the continued decreases in traditional public school enrollment. And finally, our fund balance took a series of hits this year from our landfill. We've paid nearly $5 million for the construction of a new landfill cell, and the state has required us to set aside nearly $2 million in new funding to cover the eventual costs of closing landfills, and we have also had a significant increase in the cost of operating the landfill. I want to finish out my recap of the current year on a series of positive notes, however, and there are many to cite. As noted earlier, this board has approved a major new investment in the infrastructure required to make our Triangle North Park ready for further development. We are proud that our new Congresswoman Valerie Foushee has included additional funding for that project on her community project funding list being vetted in congressional committees at this moment. We've had a number of major groundbreakings and announcements this year which represent truly significant new capital investments in Granville County as well as job opportunities for our residents. I will note, and this is more often the case than not, that there are quite a few other projects in the pipeline that we can't quite trumpet yet. And I'm proud of our county and our economic development team for continuing to successfully attract the kinds of businesses and commercial and industrial growth we need in Granville County. Finally, I am so happy for Granville County that we have such a dynamic and committed state and federal delegation. Our representatives are going to bat for us in lots of ways that I believe are going to bear fruit for Granville County over the next few years. Thanks to our commissioners, to our county attorney, and to many others for cultivating relationships with those people and working to understand the legislative dynamics and environments our state and federal elected leaders are operating in. Now, on to next year's proposed budget. Tonight is truly the culmination of 3 months of focused work by the departments and leadership of this county. You can see from the graphics on your screen that we have been at this in earnest since early February, and in fact have been planning and assessing our approaches to next year's budget for months longer than that. Departments as well as a number of outside agencies all prepared their budgets in February, including required 3 to 5% cut scenarios for management to consider. Official budget meetings with each of those departments and agencies went from March through early April, and then in the past few weeks, there has been an enormous amount of combining and assembling and massaging of numbers to make next year's budget work. Tonight, we are at the point of the manager's recommended budget where, as required by state statute, I'm presenting to you a complete and balanced budget proposal. During the next 5 weeks, we will engage in a number of additional steps to finalize this budget. As you can see on the screen, there are 2 or 3 budget work sessions, depending on what commissioners want to discuss, a public hearing on May 15th, and then 3 more weeks for any final changes to be considered before we look to adopt our fiscal 23-24 budget on the evening of Monday, June 5th. There are a number of fundamental decisions that have to be considered going into any local government budget process. One of them is how willing the governing board is to consider a tax rate increase. This board, understanding that most county residents had a 6-cent fire tax added to their tax bill this year, has made their strong preference for a no tax increase budget quite clear to me. At 84 cents per hundred in valuation, our county does have one of the higher tax rates in the state, and I certainly appreciate their desire not to take it any higher. We have been experiencing steady natural growth in our sales tax and property tax revenue, however, and what I mean by natural growth is the growth that occurs even as the rates being applied to sales and to property don't change. The growth happens because Granville County residents and visitors to Granville County are spending more money each year, and also because the growth in the total assessed value of property in the county, but more about that in a minute. The natural growth in our major revenue sources has provided a little boost in the current year and may provide several $1 million in new revenue this coming year compared to the current year's budget. It pays to be careful estimating that revenue, however, because interest rates continue to rise, fuel prices are expected to start rising again, and predictions of recession abound. So we stick to what is reasonable, and what I'm presenting to you tonight is an attempt to live within our means, tightening up here and there and considering new needs and proposals within the context of available resources. Before I move on to the major drivers of next year's budget, I do want to offer a little tickler about this time next year. As all of you know, we are in the middle of a general reassessment of property values, more typically just called the reval. This is the regular statutory process by which every piece of real estate in the county is reviewed to make sure it is being valued correctly, which is to say, as the market would value it. Indicators are that on average, residential properties in Granville County are seeing truly significant increases in value. This is good for our county in most ways. And a year from now, the county tax rate can and most likely will be adjusted downward, perhaps significantly, while still generating sufficient revenue to sustain our critical departments and programs and other county functions. I wanted to include this graph in my presentation as it shows the steady, slow progression of property tax revenue over time. Obviously, actual property tax revenue is a combination of the total assessed value in the county and the county's tax rate, but clearly the two have provided for some level of additional revenue in most years. Next year, when we recognize significantly increased values since the last reval in 2018, we will most likely see significant changes in total assessed value and the county's tax rate, though how it will affect this revenue trend line ultimately is a separate question. Sales tax has been even better to us over recent years, but you'll note that this chart starts after the last recession, and it's also true that sales tax can be a less reliable revenue source and can definitely go down significantly in a recession, so it's better not to rely too heavily on it or to overestimate what it's likely to be in a given year. To recap, revenue growth beyond what has been budgeted will add significantly to our fund balance at the end of this year, as will several $1 million in unspent funds from the current year's budget. Continued growth in our major sources of revenue will provide some additional flexibility in the coming year's budget. As noted, next year's reval will require some deeper community conversation and education about property taxes, as will a recommended review of our present use value program that staff are slowly gearing up to go through. And now we start getting down to the nitty-gritty of this coming year's budget. What does it include? What are we trying to juggle to make ends meet and live within our means while providing sufficient funding to as many critical county needs as possible? We're juggling a lot of things. In the remainder of this presentation, I will spend significant time covering each of the bulleted items on this screen. For example, a major market adjustment for public safety and law enforcement employees, inflation adjustments and merit pay for all employees, improvements to county health and retirement benefits, education funding, what we're doing to fill key gaps and do some much-needed succession planning, EMS funding, and an overview of select departmental expansion proposals. The first three items on this list have benefited immensely from the organizational skills, spreadsheet wizardry, and incredible work ethic of Assistant County Manager Karina Weichel. I tried, but could not improve upon her PowerPoint on these topics, which she's been honing over the past several months. So with her permission and giving her full credit, I am going to use her work here to show our plan for law enforcement and other employee pay and benefit adjustments. Why are we considering these significant adjustments to employee pay and benefits? Well, in the past 12 months, inflation has run 5.5%, which is actually down from levels experienced over the past few years. A pay increase that is less than inflation is an effective pay cut, and I will always try my very best not to do that to our employees. We're also facing significant competition for the hiring and retention of top quality talent. This is true for law enforcement as well as other areas of government, but at the moment it is especially true in law enforcement. We are facing the absolute necessity of improving law enforcement pay so that Granville County can continue to attract qualified individuals to help provide law enforcement, detention, court protection, and other key law enforcement functions. Commissioners approved significant mid-year bonuses, and over the course of the past 13 months, approved a variety of other measures which increased the take-home pay of early to mid-career deputies making under $50,000 by over $8,000. Some of those increases were permanent and some one-time. It is now time to make all of those increases and additional increases permanent. This county has to be able to recruit qualified and experienced individuals to be part of our law enforcement and public safety teams. So what are we proposing? The first thing we've done is to actually create an entirely separate pay plan for public safety employees. Trying to enact the needed changes to their pay while keeping them in our standard pay plan was too much. Within this new pay plan, then, we are proposing to apply a variety of adjustments to their pay that will add up to truly significant changes in the pay of our public safety employees. Before we dive into those proposed adjustments, I want to share a bit of comparative information about the competitive environment we're dealing with. If you pay attention to the news, you'll know that it has been some time since the market for law enforcement employees began to go haywire. We've been tracking what neighboring and competing jurisdictions are paying for an entry-level deputy, and here's where we are, where the red arrow is. Though I would note that total compensation is always much more complicated than salary alone, and that additional benefits vary significantly across the agencies reflected here. Further, this chart does not reflect any of those one-time bonuses or overlap pay that our law enforcement employees have received this year. But all in all, it didn't look too good for Granville County and our ability to compete for talent. So what are we proposing to do about that? Step one, which we needed to do anyway, was to acknowledge the fact that our telecommunicators and patrol deputies work through lunch more often than not, and that our detention officers have mandatory overlap time with the departing shift to ensure smooth operations and transitions between those shifts. Adjusting for those factors would result in a 4.35% pay increase for the lowest 8 pay grades of our public safety pay plan. Step 2 is a 4% cost of living adjustment, or COLA, for all public safety personnel, a salary enhancement that all full-time employees will also receive. Step 3 is a major market adjustment, where I am proposing that the county make a serious and focused effort to help the bottom half of our public safety pay plan catch up to that of neighboring jurisdictions so that we can continue to compete for well-trained early career law enforcement officers. We wish we could offer this full adjustment to all law enforcement, and in fact, we wish we could offer it to all of our county employees. The revenue just isn't there. So we stay focused on not necessarily what would be fairest, but on solving the specific problem confronting us with a targeted solution. Step 4 is merit pay. Merit pay is critical to continue attracting and motivating top employees. And though we still have some work to do to make sure merit pay is applied in as meaningful a way as possible, and though in future years I do hope to widen the available range of merit raises while tightening the criteria to achieve top raises, I believe 100% in merit pay and feel good proposing that we offer all law enforcement and other employees up to 4% for high performance. So what will that all add up to? This chart shows the compounding effect of all of those various proposed changes for different classifications within our public safety divisions. You can see along the right side of this chart the total permanent difference this will make in pay for these employees. These raises are significant. I would venture to say that Granville County has never seen the likes of some of these raises. Where would these changes then put us with regard to the competitive market for early career law enforcement? Better, but still not the best. And that's why we're also opting to improve some of the other benefits of working here at Granville County, changes which I will discuss further a little later in this presentation. How much are we proposing to invest in these changes? Over $1 million in this coming budget year. These are all permanent recurring pay increases that will continue to grow for deputies and other public safety staff as they receive future merit pay, cost of living adjustments, education pay, and so on. And many would ask, especially the employees themselves, what does this look like for a typical Granville County public safety employee? On the following slides, if you focus on only one thing, I would like you to focus primarily on the red print in the lower right-hand corners. For an early career emergency telecommunicator, also known as a 911 operator, these changes are going to make for more than a 12% raise and put nearly $5,000 additional dollars in her pocket next year. For a young detention officer, it's even better. With the report time pay, cost of living adjustment, market adjustment, and merit pay, this young employee could be taking home more than $7,500 in extra pay next year. That's more than a 20% raise. A typical early career deputy is going to do slightly better than that, taking home more than $8,000 next year, more than the salary at which they were hired. And lest some of the longer serving, higher ranked, and higher paid sheriff's office staff feel they've been left behind, their higher salaries mean that though I'm only recommending they receive the cost of living adjustment and merit pay, will also be taking home significantly more pay. In this example, which is a real example, the additional pay totals nearly $6,000. Non-public safety personnel will also be getting a significant boost next year through the cost of living adjustment and a merit pay, though I will again point out that after considering inflation, these cannot really be considered lavish raises. These are smaller raises for a larger number of employees, and the total cost of these also comes out to just over $1 million. Our human resources, our human capital at the county is what we hang our hat on. We cannot provide any of our services without them, and as a wiser person than me once said, if you don't invest in your employees, someone else will. I think it goes without saying that the more talented the employee, the more true this becomes. And as I did for public safety employees, I also want to show what this set of pay increases looks like for a typical non-public safety employee. As you can see here, it will likely mean something in the $3,000 to $4,000 to $5,000 range, depending on salary. As foreshadowed earlier, we've also been considering what else we can do to attract and retain critical talent. In addition to the COLA and continuing merit pay, I'm proposing that we eliminate the $45 monthly health insurance premium for employees who agree to participate in our wellness program, a program designed to keep us healthy, to minimize health risks, and to catch serious risks as early as possible. I'm also recommending in this budget that we begin a 2-year process of reducing the required employee contribution for county health care in half. Today, an employee who wants to sign his or her family up to receive health care through the county's health care plan pays over $1,000 a month to participate, a benefit, if you can call it that, which is not an equitable or viable option for the vast majority of our employees. This change, I firmly believe, is the right thing to do. We also need to begin the process of improving our county benefits package. We are one of very few local governments only matching 401k investments at 1%, and this budget recommends that we begin to increase that match rate by 1% each year until we're at the same level as the vast majority of nearby local governments. And now, an ever-present and incredibly important part of this conversation, which is the Board of County Commissioners' support for education. As you all know, K-12 education in the state of North Carolina is largely state-funded. Typically, state funding makes up about 60% of the school's funding, federal funding about 10%, and local and other funds making up the remaining 30%. I will note that the state of North Carolina has historically not been terribly generous with its funding for public schooling and specifically for teacher pay. Additionally, only a small portion of the so-called education lottery funds ever make it to our education system. Though it's fair for school districts and school advocates to look to their local boards of county commissioners for help, there are limits to what those boards and the taxpayers in those communities can provide. Across the state, local funds do make a big difference between well-funded districts and not so well-funded districts. Granville County Commissioners have sought over time to provide sufficient additional local funding for the schools, and since the advent of charter schools, a large and growing portion of that funding has also been transferred on a per-pupil basis to charter schools attended by Granville County students. We call this local operational funding for schools current expense funding. As you can see on this table, the total number of school-age Granville County students enrolled in traditional public schools and charters has remained fairly steady over the past 5 years. County current expense funding, however, has increased regularly each year by an average of $675,000 over the past 5 years. My recommended budget for next fiscal year includes an increase in current expense funding of nearly $1 million, equivalent to a 4.7% increase at the per-pupil level. This recommended amount includes funds that county commissioners previously agreed to help with salary compression over 3 years. It includes the requested funding for increased benefit costs for school employees, additional salary compression costs, and the increased local supplement needed to match the significant state pay increases, which I'm happy to say appear to be in the works in Raleigh. As noted on this slide, $19 million is equivalent to 35 cents on our tax rate, with each penny on the tax rate generating a little under $550,000. Seen in another light, and with a few more years of history, I think everyone can appreciate the ongoing commitment of this board to our local schools. In addition to the significant increase in current expense funding for the schools, I'm recommending that the county meet the full capital request from the school system. With regard to the shown chart, this is a reminder that Category 1 capital funding is primarily for building maintenance and renovation. This year, the schools asked for about $46,000 in additional funding in this category for a total of over $1.1 million, and my recommendation is certainly that we meet that request. Category 2 and 3 capital funding is for equipment and vehicles, and again, my recommendation is that we meet this request. Finally, there is school-related debt service. Put more simply, this is the total mortgage payment Granville County still has for principal and interest owed on schools we constructed in the past. We have no real choice but to continue meeting this request. So in addition to operating funds totaling over $19 million, total capital funding is over $7 million additional dollars, equivalent to an additional 13 cents on our property tax rate. Overall, and though I accept the premise that our students in our school system can always use more, I believe the Granville County Board of Commissioners is upholding their part of this bargain and committing a truly significant portion of the funding at their disposal to help provide Granville County students an excellent education. In addition to the proposals for current expense and capital funding, there are a number of important additional pieces of context related to school funding that I would like to dwell on for a few seconds. One is that the school system continues to bolster its normal operating budget with federal COVID funding. Of course, we're all glad for this funding. The havoc that COVID wreaked in the educational lives on of our children, my children included, is real. Some of the uses to which that funding is being put, additional teacher pay, for example, are items that the county will likely have to consider continuing next fiscal year. And I think there is some wisdom in both the schools and the county keeping a little powder dry to deal with that fiscal cliff next fall. The second piece of context is that the schools appear to be carrying a healthy fund balance. In an environment where continued vacancies and other savings continue to feed that fund balance, using these one-time funds to meet a broader set of one-time needs seems wise to me. We've been shown, for example, substantial lists of deferred maintenance at various schools, and there's no reason fund balance can't be used somewhat more liberally to start meeting some of those needs. As opposed to one-time funds, recurring savings are the best kind of savings. I've said this to Dr. McLean, the superintendent, and to as many of the school board members as I have been able to, but I think it's important to recognize how difficult the school closing conversations have been for them and for long-standing school communities. I believe the whole community owes them a debt of gratitude for moving forward with those conversations despite their difficulty. In a district that has lost nearly 25% of its enrollment in the last 10 years, it is imperative that we regroup, refocus, and repurpose whatever savings we can gather to help facilitate further movement towards our most important goals. Is it teaching assistants or school counselors? I wish my recommended budget could have met that part of the school's request as well, but I think it's important and fair to point out that the internally generated and recurring savings they showed us can also be used for those same purposes and would more than cover them. Or they could be used for teacher pay. Finally, I want to acknowledge that neither this recommended budget nor this presentation gets into very many of the details of the school system's needs or their request to the county. This board and the Board of Education are elected for different reasons. It is not this board's ability nor purview to micromanage the needs or funding decisions of the school system. The school system has a budget larger than the county's, and school board members are elected to make decisions within that budget. This board's job is to provide all the funding it can for this critical county purpose, as well as for quite a few others. So I will show the following slide again. Though every county-funded function can and probably does believe it has a claim on more of the finite county resources than it receives, I do not believe one can look at this graph and draw the conclusion that our county commissioners are not making a good faith effort to keep our schools whole. We're doing what we can and will continue to. We look forward to further partnerships and further exploration of ways the multi-year trend in enrollment may possibly be reversed. And I believe that doing so will require both boards to entertain some truly challenging thoughts and to be ready to work thoughtfully together for the benefit of this community. Some education funding is going strongly up, and some, at least for now, has to come down. In the current year, commissioners were able to fund some additional capital outlay at the Vance Granville main campus, but I'm recommending we drop that back to a lower level for the coming year. Vance and Granville counties, which fund 75% and 25% of the main campus operations and capital outlay respectively, are recommending putting an additional nearly $300,000 into main campus expenses, with our Granville County share at just under $75,000. There are also significant portions of Vance Granville Community College's ask that I don't believe we can fund, though there are silver linings for each of those areas. The college has made a $5.6 million request for capital needs on the main campus, a request which neither Vance County nor Granville County can meet this cycle in the county manager's opinions. That funding request, however, is paired with approximately $1.3 million from the State Capital Improvement Fund that the college will be using to move forward with some of the highest priority HVAC and lighting system replacement projects. The additional funding requested is for roof repairs, renovations, more HVAC replacements, and pavement repairs around the campus. Though I do not believe we can meet this request this cycle, I do recommend that we begin active discussions with the college and Vance County to perhaps consider installment debt financing to spread out the cost of these improvements over the 10 to 20 life year span of the improvements themselves. There are also a variety of capital needs at Vance Granville's South Campus. Once again, through active financial planning and working through the state, we're grateful to Vance Granville Community College. Even without the additional funding requested, we'll be moving forward with nearly $600,000 worth of critical repairs and upgrades at that facility using a combination of fund balance and funding received from the State Capital Improvement Fund. One final note on our ongoing partnership with Vance County and Vance Granville Community College. I'm happy to report that I believe the possibility of our getting significant outside funding to help build an advanced manufacturing center at Triangle North under Vance Granville's leadership seems stronger to me now than at any time in the past. The pay increases I spoke of at the beginning of tonight's presentation are about staying competitive in an inflationary world where good workers have choices. We also need new positions from time to time. The county is growing, not only in population, but in the complexity of the work your county staff is required to perform. It is good management to meet those expanding day-to-day needs and to do thoughtful succession planning that can create a moderate level of redundancy in our mission-critical areas. As such, I'm recommending the approval of 9 new full-time positions, though 3 of those, the positions for the Department of Social Services, are partially funded by the state. This increase in positions will be partly offset by the elimination of 2 positions in other parts of the county. The proposed Assistant Finance Director would provide backup capacity across all budget and financial functions and responsibilities at the county. The Server Administrator for our IT department would provide a combination of specialized expertise and extra bandwidth in a department that provides and protects the equipment and network used by every single department and function at this county. I have recent personal experience in a jurisdiction that suffered a major cyber attack. Not only is it no fun, but it puts the entire organization and community at risk. The Deputy Fire Marshal position would help make sure that we keep up with required fire safety inspections of all public facilities in the county. It is critical that the county be able to catch up and keep up with this ever-expanding workload. Managing recruitment, hiring, benefits administration, performance evaluation, and dealing with all the other personnel-related questions and challenges for an organization our size has become too much for a 2-person HR department. It puts us at risk. The HR recruitment specialist that I've proposed will help spread some of that workload and provide a bit of additional redundancy in this critical department as well. The senior tax specialist will be able to help lead work on both assessing and collections, and also with our upcoming present use value work. The 3 DSS positions, again, all partly funded by the state, would provide a modicum of additional horsepower and relief in an area with rising caseloads and frequent vacancies. The management analyst I proposed will serve in the county manager's office and will provide a broad range of analysis, writing, project management, and other support functions. The grants officer will be shared with the city of Creedmoor, which will provide half of the funding for the position. The goal is for this position to bring grant-related expertise into our organizations and to work with subject matter experts in our departments to make sure we submit better applications for a larger number of more targeted grants. 2 part-time election specialists will help absorb some of the significant unmet workload in that department, particularly around election times. And at the bottom of the chart, you will also see that I'm recommending a $3 an hour increase in the pay for poll workers, up to a whopping and surely irresistible $12 an hour, as well as a larger overtime budget for the required overtime we need our one-stop workers to work. The additional part-time staff person or position for the South Granville Senior Center would help ensure that the center is able to stay open for all of its normal advertised hours, something which is often not possible with the current staffing configuration. Finally, I'm also recommending reclassification for 6 positions, totaling recurring salary of just under $30,000. One of the benefits of moving to the new fire district tax to fund our fire protection services is that it freed up general fund public safety money to increase the county's contribution to emergency medical services, or EMS. Even beyond the steep increase in EMS subsidy funding shown here in the past several years, the county has also spent $1.25 million in ARPA funds this past year on new ambulances for the system. And though the Granville Health System did not request any increase in EMS subsidy this year, EMS funding continues to be a substantial and growing commitment for the Granville County Commissioners. This slide shows a summary of key operating expansions at the county I'm proposing to fund in the coming year. These are obviously slightly rounded numbers, and I've already spoken about a number of these. An update on the Carter Area Regional Transit System, or CARTS, is coming next. Beyond that, there is funding for a new website platform, a planned $40,000 increase in funding for Granville Vance Public Health, and a modicum of additional funding for animal control to make sure that department is in a position to balance the undesirable option of euthanasia with more appropriate and humane approaches when the situation allows for it. Our 4-county regional transit system, also known as CARTS, is a critical support for our seniors, for some of our disabled residents, and for those without other means of transportation. Unfortunately, it has also had some financial management issues over the past several years, issues which have come to light as one-time COVID funds that were used to plug recurring budget holes are drying up. The CARTS board, the new interim CARTS leadership, and the county managers' offices for Granville, Vance, Warren, and Franklin are all working together to try to get this critical program back on track and make sure it remains available to our citizens. But I do think that some additional funds will be needed this year and for at least a year or two moving forward before this program is truly back on track. I'm happy to say that a number of key capital projects will continue moving forward in FY 23-24. These include our North Granville Senior Center in Stovall, our significant investment of ARPA funds toward extension of water sewer infrastructure in Triangle North, repair and repaving of walking trails at the Granville Athletic Park, the final review and probable demolition of the former Health Department building on Hunt Drive, and finally, long overdue upgrades to the audiovisual equipment in this room and the meeting room next door, which will add broader and more modern functionality to both spaces. Another important process continuing to move forward next fiscal year is the public assessment and planning process, whereby Granville County will decide how to spend its portion of the 2 current national opioid settlements. Granville County's share will be just under $7 million paid out over the next 15 years. We've already received approximately $500,000 of that funding, and the Opioid Advisory Committee is doing its work, continuing to seek public input, and will soon begin formulating its initial recommendations for the expenditure of these funds. As we near the end of this presentation, I want to spend just a few minutes on a number of key operational changes at Granville County that I believe will bring significant long-term improvements and efficiencies to our organization without costing any additional money at all. The first is a changeover of our current fleet system to a much more sophisticated approach that will be implemented through a partnership with Enterprise Fleet Management. And Mike Phelps is still here, and I can thank him for starting that process. I picked up that ball and tried to run with it. Then there is the centralization of IT purchasing and management, and last but not least, the expansion of Veteran Services office hours in a new location in the county. So fleet. Up until now, Granville County has managed its fleet the same way they probably did 50 or 60 years ago. We purchase vehicles outright, we drive them until they can't go anymore, regardless of maintenance costs, and then patch them up one last time, give them to a less fortunate department as a hand-me-down before eventually possibly selling them for scrap. There has been no centralized procurement, maintenance tracking, fuel tracking, or efficient disposition of vehicles, and staff with little knowledge of vehicles are often tasked with making high-dollar decisions about those vehicles. I'll admit that some aspects of this approach may feel frugal, but as it turns out, there are much more efficient uses of the approximately $1.5 million the county spends on vehicles and vehicle-related services each year. Enterprise Fleet Management offers the county significant improvements in our fleet management across the board. The contract I'm proposing we enter into with Enterprise has been approved twice through national RFPs and is already under use by over 300 state and local governments across the United States, including nearly 20 in the state of North Carolina. Enterprise offers a complete set of fleet services, including acquisition, license, title, and registration, aftermarket customization, maintenance management, fueling, risk management, telematics, driver safety, and resale. We still get to use our local providers, which ensures that our local fleet dollars continue to be largely recycled within the community, and the modified equity leases Enterprise uses with governmental entities like us quickly lowers the average age of the vehicles in our fleet, thereby also lowering maintenance costs and improving safety. All of this is available to the county at an annual cost equal to or lower than what we have spent historically. Although our IT functions are staying predominantly in-house, there are some changes afoot in how we do IT purchasing and management that I'm quite certain will serve this organization well, and some of the logic behind these changes is not so different from the logic behind the proposed changes in fleet management. Through these changes, we will be able to meet the service needs of our employees and departments more efficiently, and we will reduce our exposure to cyber attacks, bad actors, and malicious efforts to compromise our county systems. The server administrator position mentioned earlier is also a part of these IT improvements and strengthening. The last operational change I want to mention is a small one, but I want to appreciate board initiative, staff initiative, and the spirit of partnership from the city of Creedmoor that has allowed our Veteran Service Office to have office hours at Creedmoor City Hall once a week on Wednesdays. Commissioners, this is what it all boils down to. Not including ARPA funds, which I've removed from the table shown here because they would really only confuse one's understanding of our true year-over-year budget progression, you can see the slow, orderly, measured increases in our county budgets. Behind that are our careful attempts to improve county operations, to cut back where possible, and to apply funds where needed to make sure critical county functions can continue operating as we need them to. Our revenue sources are sufficient to cover this increase in budget without any property tax increase. I would mention that we are still reviewing sales tax growth projections for next year, and it is possible that we may be able to increase our sales tax revenue projections further and decrease the noted use of fund balance to balance next year's budget. And that's it. Commissioners, it is a privilege to be where I am right now. This is a great county. It is a growing and interesting and complicated county. It has thoughtful and committed elected leadership, not to mention a huge number of committed employees and volunteers around the county helping provide the necessary functions that keep this county afloat. I'm truly grateful you chose me to work with you and to work with this community for the betterment of this community. Thank you. This concludes my remarks, and I think we can all look forward to the additional work sessions noted on your screens, and assuming things go according to plan, the adoption of a solid, no tax increase budget for next fiscal year on Monday evening, June 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, County Manager. If we would just take we'll make a quick comment, and then we're going to take a 10-minute recess. To follow up on the County Manager's comments, we will have on Monday, May 8th at 9 a.m. and Thursday, May 11th at 9 a.m. beginning, and if necessary, Friday, May 12th at 9 a.m. We'll hold budget work sessions on the proposed fiscal year 2023-24 budget. At those times, commissioners will weigh in with their thoughts and questions and a variety of information that we will share and discuss on how we can move this budget along, where we may agree or disagree, but fine tune it. I want to praise you and your staff, County Manager, at this point, and I'll let other commissioners speak during our speaking session. At this time, Board, if I can have a motion for a recess. Okay, and there'll also be a proposed public hearing on May 15th on the budget as well. Can I have a motion in regards to recess?
I'll make that motion.
Have a second?
Second.
Sue and Jay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're recessed for 10 minutes. Thank you.
It was Rob.
Huh?
It was Rob. I made this.
Rob made the second.
That's right, came from this side.
That was awesome. Motion, second.
Z.
Mr. J. Board's back in session. Our next topic is a request to consider awarding a fixed price service contract for a one-time environmental cleaning service necessary to eliminate mildew and mold in furnishings. Mr. Phillips, if you would, please present to the board the background and recommendations and so forth.
Thank you, Chairman May, Granville County Commissioners. On January 30th, Granville County was notified of a potential mold issue within the lower level of 208 Wall Street, which is adult probations. In response to this notification, the county retained an environmental testing firm to sample the air quality within the interior space. The testing results indicated a higher level of mold spores, primarily due to a higher level of moisture than recommended by the American Industrial Hygiene Association. Recommendations noted within the report included cleaning the surfaces with an approved clean agent and using HEPA-equipped vacuums. Moisture control is also noted, which will be done by the county just as soon as dehumidifiers can be located and installed. In accordance with this report, we contacted two firms, two certified firms to provide the price of the cleaning services. Jansic Building Group LLC was the low price bidder at $12,925. This request does comply with Section 2, and our current fiscal year can accommodate this funding request. It's my recommendation that we award the environmental cleaning services to Jansic Building Group LLC for an amount not to exceed $12,925. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Does the board have any? I have only one question, Mr. Phillips. For the public's edification, what would be the mitigation and prevention methods going forward so we're not back at this point?
Controlling moisture.
And how they plan on doing that?
With dehumidifiers.
Okay, so they'll install them, or we're going to have to go out and...
The county's going to work on that. We're working on trying to obtain pricing for dehumidifiers, get them sized first.
Okay.
And once we get them sized and purchased, we'll install them permanently.
And that hopefully will resolve it so we're not back here again.
That will resolve the moisture issue, which is a product of the mold and mildew. Yes, sir.
If you do that, you're going to have a continuous drainage, so they'll have to run all the time, or
Yes, they
as
will.
needed.
Yes, they will.
So you'll have
They'll
to
need to be piped to the outside.
Correct, okay. Will those folks there have to be moved out while all this is going on?
We're going to be doing it on the weekends. We've already talked with adult probation staff. We're going to do it over a series of 3 weekends.
Okay.
Doing probably 5 to 7 offices at the time.
Okay.
So they'll be moving their stuff for them. They get their confidential information, obviously, that they're going to accumulate and store away. And Jansic will go in there with their workers and move the furniture and stuff around to get everything cleaned.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I move that we approve the contract with Jansic Building Group in the amount of $12,935.
Mr. Williford makes a motion that we approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Ms. Hedman seconds. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. I want to go back to our previous agenda item, the fiscal year 2023-24 budget presentation, and I need the board's pleasure on the county manager recommends for the public hearing and the recommendation for that.
I'll offer a motion that we accept the county manager's recommendation and schedule the public hearing on the budget on May the 15th, 2023.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Karen and Commissioner Henman. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It passes. Item 9, then we did complete the last one, did we not? Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Phillips, again, the request a fixed price service contract for engineering project assistance needed for the planned asphalt trail replacement and repairs at, I believe, the Gap.
Yes, sir. The current approved fiscal capital budget has allocated funds needed to replace and repair a section of the Phase 1 asphalt walking trails. Over the past 20 years, the trail infrastructure has been damaged from drainage and adjacent tree roots, creating tripping hazards for our visitors utilizing the path. Periodic maintenance has been done over the years. However, more significant work needs to be done, including possibly replacing various sections of the trail. This request is to provide staff with engineering guidance to evaluate, recommend reconstruction methods and design, and to monitor the work to ensure that the trail system will withstand another 20-plus years of use. We contacted and we had 3 firms respond to this. Withers and Revenell, even though they had a price of $19,000, which is not the cheapest price, we felt had the experience to be able to handle the work, to provide a cost-effective means of repairs and replacement, as well as design a system that will function well for us for the next 20 years. They've got work experience in Raleigh, Durham, and Cary, I believe, doing sidewalk and asphalt trails, specifically as a result of root damage. This section complies with Section 5 of our purchasing policies. And I recommend awarding the contract to Withers and Revenell based on their extensive experience for amount not to exceed $19,000. I'll answer any questions if I can.
And if I'm correct, even though they are the highest bidder, they actually came to site?
They did. They showed probably the most interest in the project. I met them out there. They walked the trails, took a look at the locations, and we discussed some various repair and replacement methods. But so yeah, they've done a very good job so far, at least showing interest.
Any other commissioners have any questions? Mr. Williford?
Is there a liability? These trails open now? You said that
they are open. We've been maintaining them. We've had a firm go out there in the past and cut down some of the larger tripping hazards. We've marked them. So, you know, I've walked the trails a couple of times in the last month, and there's no bad areas. Work needs to be done. I guess that's my best.
But it's okay to continue use of them?
Yes, sir. I believe so. Yes, sir.
And this is look at the entire trail, and this is just fixing the sections within the entire.
We're not having problems with Phase 2, which is the middle phase, primarily because there's no trees on Phase 2, nor Phase 3, which was the tennis court expansion. Phase 1, the original construction part, you know, it's so nice because it's all surrounded by trees. Well, trees, particularly pines, which is the predominant species out there, you know, creates havoc on asphalt and other concrete surfaces with their lateral root spread. So it's, you know, the course of action may be removing some trees that are in close proximity of the trails, but I think that the methods we have discussed was using either what they call a root barrier, which is trenched down beside the trail and actually acts as it's got a herbicide that keeps roots from growing back underneath the trail areas while, you know, when the trails be repaired so they don't cause damage in the future.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners or county manager have any questions? Okay, with pleasure of the board.
I'll move that we approve the contract with Withers Ravenel.
Mr. Williford makes a motion and a second.
Second.
Commissioner Karen seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for all the work you do, Scott. It's much appreciated. Next, we're moving on to Granville County Human Relations Commission. And County Manager, I'm going to ask you to kind of lead with this and make a notation on where we're at with this in general discussion. And then I'll follow up with the recommendations we have toward the background.
Okay. I don't have a lot to add at this point, just that this is another county advisory board with some vacancies. We saw Ms. Mayfield earlier being recognized for her long service on the Human Relations Commission. This commission is one where we have been reviewing old bylaws and so on that we're, along with other advisory boards, looking to review this summer and perhaps come back with some recommendations about standardizing terms, term limits, bylaws, and so on. Beyond that, I don't have too much to report at the current time.
Very good. And as noted in the background board, the staff is aware, as the county manager said, of some members have exceeded term limits, but that's being worked on to county manager's recommendation. And Sarah Mayfield from District 1 has resigned and needs to be replaced. And there's also 2 District 6 vacancies and a District 7 at this time. Lynn Aldred from District 1 has submitted an application for consideration. And I'm not aware of any District 1 opening. There is one District 1 opening, Ms. Mayfield. So I'm open to any motions the board may have.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to offer a motion that Lynn Aldred become our representative replacing Sarah Mayfield.
I'll second. Mr. J has a motion for Ms. Aldred, and Mr. Williford has second. Any further discussion on that nomination? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Do we have any other commissioners wishing to make any recommendations this time to fill any board positions? Okay, with that being said, I just want to note to the county manager, as the review takes place, that a number of districts have, and for various reasons, which your review will identify, a disproportionate number of representatives in comparison to some other districts. And so I'm hoping either that there's an explanation historically in that I'm unaware of, which there could be, but what I'm hoping is that we can pare those down to where we have appropriate number of representation from each district.
Some of those,
Yes, ma'am.
some of those changes in districts were due to redistricting, so we did review the list, and some that were appointed by some districts did change.
So good. So part of that review would be, county manager, that we level it out. Any other comments or anything? We'll move on. Ms. Weichel. To approve a growing rural economies with access to technology, great. Grant agreement with North Carolina Department of Information Technology, NCDIT. Ms. Weichel, I know you're going to give us a really good presentation. You're well prepared, but I'll go ahead and let you know up front so you can just continue talking when you get there. How we got here and why this location and why not other locations once you finish your presentation, to spare you the questioning.
Okay. Seems like we've been talking about the GREAT grant for a while, because we have been talking about the GREAT grant for a while. We were waiting for the budget to pass, and we were waiting for the application cycle to open, and then we were partnering and talking with both Brightspeed and Charter Communications. And our Brightspeed project, as you know, was awarded. They were awarded the maximum level of funding of $4 million by North Carolina Department of Information Technology, or NCDIT. And their project will bring fiber to the home, high-speed internet service to approximately 1,914 locations in Granville County. Of those, about 1,880 of those are households or residences, and about 34 are businesses. Of this about $6.7 million project, the county had previously committed a partnership with Brightspeed, wherein the counties will contribute about $1.3 million, or 20%, using the American Rescue Act funds under the infrastructure category. The agreement in your, well, I think it was emailed to you separately, outlines responsibilities that NCDIT is taking on for project monitoring to ensure that progress is made toward project milestones. I was also wanted to let you know that there is a map available for county residents that they can go online and drill down into their specific address to see if their address is part of the project, and we'll be making that available through a press release and on our website. And county GIS staff also created the the map that you see on your screens, and it was included in your board packet to help identify those roads where the project will be built out. I also wanted to mention there is a 2-year window from the time the agreement is executed that they have to do the build out. All funding from NCDIT and Granville County will be on a reimbursement basis. That's outlined in Exhibit J of the agreement. Brightspeed will submit their request, because they are the grantee, directly for reimbursement to NCDIT, and upon approval of those payment requests, NCDIT will provide the county with a copy, and then we will be making our 20% portion of that for the match. So to your question about why this project, why here, we've been working with several different providers, and we had 2 providers that we did agree to partner with on this great grant. We were awarded the first one through Brightspeed. The second one has not been awarded, but there is a second round of GREAT coming. That was a project that Charter Communications put forth. We don't know yet. I think they're going to try to announce those soon. They keep telling us soon. They have about $90 million left of their $350 million that they had for broadband. And so there's still a chance that we may get a charter project as well. With the providers, as you know, our hands are tied in the state of North Carolina. We cannot build or infrastructure or provide service, so we're kind of at the mercy of the providers. And they determine where they want to build their infrastructure. That's really important and something that folks don't quite understand, especially folks coming from out of state. But these providers are for-profit businesses, and they look at their bottom line when they're determining where they want to lay their infrastructure. So one of the things the county can do is partner with them on great grants and provide funding, which we have done on, like I said, 2 separate projects. We're still hoping that our Charter Communications project may get funded. That project was a little more central, some northwest Oxford and some central locations south of the Tar River. So we're still holding out hope for that. But there's also some other projects that are coming up that the county has already expressed interest in, one of those being the Completing Access to Broadband, or the CAB program. This is going to allow the county to have a greater voice in where projects are built, because we'll be going through a RFP process with the NCDIT and mutually agreeing and identifying areas in the county that are underserved or unserved, and then putting out an RFP process for providers to bid on those locations. There is a heavier financial commitment from the county in that project, or I'm sorry, that grant, but it does give us a little more freedom as to where a project gets built. Hopefully that answered your question.
Your recommendation, ma'am.
Oh, recommendation is to authorize the county manager to execute the NCDIT and Brightspeed grant agreement on behalf of Granville County. And I do believe the county attorney had some comments as well.
And then prior to, go ahead, County Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This agreement's been an ongoing effort between the counties, the County Commissioners Association, and NCDIT. I do want to bring your attention to one thing that I want to make you aware of, but still have the recommendation that you move forward if you're comfortable with it for approval. As you know, NCDIT has graciously agreed to take on the primary monitoring function and sort of be the lead on the project. The complication with that is uniform guidance is the federal requirement for how subrecipients contract and spend money. Requires that all pass-through entities, and both the county and the state are pass-through entities under ARPA funding. So as you can see, we've got the county contributing $1.3 million, a little over $1.3 million to the total project cost of $6.67 million. So both the state and the county are pass-through entities, and both have independent obligations to comply with ARPA. And under
2 CFR 200.332, it states that all pass-through entities must do a risk assessment, must do monitoring, and must perform compliance functions. And that's raised some concern with the counties and the County Commissioners Association. We've had extensive conversations, and I'm representing the County Commissioners Association on this matter as well. We've had extensive conversations with DIT. We've all taken it all the way up to the Treasury Department, who through an email has told us that they would allow DIT to serve these functions on behalf of both the county and the state. I'm sorry, on behalf of both the county and the state. So that's the best we've got right now is an email confirmation of that. We'll continue to work to get something more, but I think it's a reasonable risk to move forward this way, and we will certainly document our file with the communication from Treasury stating that DIT can undertake these compliance functions on our behalf.
Any board members have any questions to the attorney regarding that?
So while we at, we still at the same spot, right?
I'm sorry?
So while we at, we still at the same spot?
Really?
As far as...
what you said.
Uh-huh.
I'm not recommending that you don't approve it. I just want you to understand.
No, I'm saying, we still at the same spot as we were to start with, right?
I think I understand what you're saying, so yes, we are.
After 6 or 9 months of waiting, we're finally at the
Yes.
point of executing this agreement for this first phase of expansion.
Okay.
Is that more or less what you're asking?
That's more or less, we still, in a nutshell, we still at the same spot.
Waiting, and I think a lot of our waiting time was for NCDIT to get the agreements put together. And so now they're just trying to iron out some of those details so that we all are all understanding and compliant with UG requirements.
I think they got the agreements out in late February, is my recollection. Is that right? The original draft for the
draft, yes.
Right.
We
The
didn't get
draft.
our final agreement until early April.
Right. I mean, like within
Yeah,
the
the
last,
draft was out for comments, and yes,
yeah, like within the last 10 days or so, I think is when you got the execution draft.
yes.
So County Attorney, you expect any, the U.S. Treasury is, I think what we're talking about, are you expecting them to follow up with an actual correspondence other than the email? Or a change in the CFR?
We would love to see that, but again, we've got the email correspondence that should give a reasonable level of comfort to an auditor, and eventually one would hope we'd get something on letterhead.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board? There are no more questions.
I move we follow the recommendations and proceed carefully and make sure we jump through all the hoops with the ARPA funding.
Commissioner Gooch and Commissioner Jay with the second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. I would open this up just briefly for a second to remind our residents that as part of this, we did set aside additional funding as well should ISP, Internet Service Providers, become available in the southern part of the county. And I know that the county continues to look for those, but again, it is really the ISP providers who really decide where they're going to go.
And that's true. And if you remember talking with Brightspeed on this project, so much of the area in the southern part of the county is reporting 25.3 speeds, which made it ineligible for grades.
That's right.
We know that's not decent internet, but that was their eligibility threshold. The CAB program won't have that same threshold. It'll raise the threshold, and we're hearing that the 2023 Great Grant cycle may as well. So there's promising news for those locations that some of the areas are reporting 25.3 that really isn't adequate. It really is underserved.
They're considered served instead of underserved.
That's correct.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for the explanation.
I'm new to all this, so they have service just enough not to qualify.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
You really, cause they got really whole service all the way down, when you turn off 85 going all the way down to Central Avenue. You just like you was standing
Right.
on O'Keefe.
Yeah, and a lot of those folks have old copper lines from DSL. I hear from them a lot. So yeah, you've put it perfectly, Commissioner Williford. They have just enough to be considered ineligible. It's not enough to function on.
So the threshold, if it's below that, they qualify for the,
Yeah, they would be considered underserved.
okay.
But like I said, they're raising that, they're realizing that's not adequate. Like, for example, the Great Grant Project requires 100 upload, 100 download. And so there's a vast difference. And the CAB program is going to probably mimic those thresholds, but it won't have a limit of 25.3. You'll still be eligible, which is another benefit of that program, even though, like I said, it's going to cost the county more because it's at least a 35% match for counties who've received $8 million or more in ARPA funds.
Okay. Ms. Michael, thank you for your report, ma'am. County Manager, do you have anything further?
Just one brief update, which is on the ambulance ordinance of the county and franchise applications under that ordinance. Commissioners will likely recall maybe 4 weeks or 6 weeks ago, we had a new franchise application. Came to realize, however, that our own ordinance that governs the providing of new franchises was kind of hopelessly out of date and itself needed to be revised. And then, so we're trying to get that before you March 15th. The county attorney and emergency management director and I spent some significant time working through that new draft ordinance, and then we would hope to be able to have the franchisees apply according to that new ordinance before the end of the year, if possible. We're aiming for that. That may or may not end up being possible, but we're really gunning for that outcome. End of the fiscal year, sorry.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Wren. And Mr. Wren, just give us a quick update on the governmental and the ESAC for asset forfeiture update on how close we're coming to getting that together as well. And this would be in your report, sir, if you have one.
Okay, so, well, I don't have anything else in the report, so you can, if Drew is done, you can count this as my report. We have a meeting coming up in the next few days, I think it was the 8th or the 9th, a virtual meeting with Cherry Beckert, the accounting firm that did some of the audit work with regards to governmental asset forfeiture funds, to sort of scope out what that might look like, and we'll bring a proposal back to you about just in general how we would recommend moving forward with that. So we're going to get some information, talk through it in the context of federal grants in general, and bring something back to you following that.
And just for the public, this is working on processes so that we can ensure that we're adequately accounting for any and all federal funding. That includes asset forfeiture or the equitable sharing program, and that full thorough accounting of that, and putting something in place so that when the county manager and or the sheriff signs, or any other county official signs a document relevant to federal funding, that it meets all the standard requirements and all the guidelines that are provided, so that we don't have any mishaps in the future, and we're following all general accounting practices that are applicable through the North Carolina Fiscal Control Act. So, correct, County Attorney?
That's correct.
Okay.
And possibly coming up with some tracking mechanisms to ensure good practices on the front end as well, too.
Okay, then thank you both for hustling on those, and appreciate it, especially with right in the midstream of all the budget, County Manager. Thank you. Well, now,
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question for Mr. Wren. We had talked a couple meetings back about adding people onto the DSS board, and you were going to check to see what we needed to do to add those 2 more people on. Have you gotten anywhere on that?
I know what we need to do. I think the question is going ahead and following up with it, and so Drew and I will coordinate on that and get back.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay. Does any other commissioner have a question for either the county manager or the county attorney, since they both provided their report? We'll now move to presentations by county board members. We'll start with Commissioner Zelotes J. from District 1.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to let everyone know that the board members know that from Ralph Berry, the mayor of Virgin Island, they're having their summer fest the 27th of this month. Ask each and every one if they want to come out and go along with us, along with their parade starting at 11 o'clock. Commissioner Himmel and I have been going for years and enjoying the barbecue and the Burma stew after the parade, and throwing cannon and having a good time. Also, just like to ask, could you find out for me about did the school ever set fiber up to total school, full fiber up to the total school? And what?
About that, and he never got back to me. I did reach out to him, and I'll have to get with you after. I'll have to look and find out what the resolution is.
Okay, please do. I think they run fiber all the way up to total school.
One hop.
And I don't know what happened to that. But anyway, if you could find out for that for me, please. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Jay. Commissioner Rob Williford.
The only thing I have, Mr. Chairman, is the ABC board broke ground last Thursday for the new building between the Oxford Fire Department and the present building. So dirt is being moved and not construction, but site improvement is underway. That's all I have.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Sue Hinman.
And thank you, sir. I spoke with Mr. Al Woodliff the other day, and he has again asked me to have the old fire station Opera House wall painted. He is willing to pay for the paint for a mural on one wall only, and it has to represent Oxford only, not Granville County. At that time, he hung up on me before I could ask other questions. So I had told him at the start of the conversation I would not support that because it's not safe, and he didn't answer my questions. I said I'd bring it up. It's been brought up. I still say no. That's the end of my report.
Maybe to help county manager, just give us give us a forecast of, although not a timeline, because, but a forecast of what the county's thinking and kind of your best judgment.
Sure. I think there's no arguing that the building, if it is to stay in circulation, could use a facelift. It's not the county's intention, to my knowledge, to continue to use that building. In fact, we are working as fast as we can right now to move county functions in that building out and looking at the potential future demolition of that building. The flaking paint is more problematic than it would appear to a casual observer. This is old paint, and you know that paint put on a building prior to 1978 or 1979 may have lead in it. There's other things in the mortar and paint, and so, you know, before you kind of throw new paint on top of it, there's a variety of other remediation things that would need to be done, that in our estimation at this point, and I did have some significant conversation with Scott Phillips about this question, are probably not financially responsible actions to take at this point, given our intentions for the building.
And intentions being?
To vacate it and demolish it.
Okay.
And so painting one wall, not all four, and they all four need paint, would be ridiculous.
I think there's just too many expensive questions to answer before we would even get to the conversation of what we wanted to put on one wall or who would design it and what it would reflect. That I think that's kind of putting the cart quite a long ways before the horse.
Thank you, County Manager, and thank you, Commissioner Hinman. Do you have any other?
I do not, sir. Thank you.
Commissioner Timothy Karen.
So one item, May the 4th in Creedmoor, we are going to be having our final public engagement session for our opiate advisory committee. And this is in reference to how the county plans on spending the opiate settlement funds. It was a point earlier in this meeting. We're going to be receiving ballpark about $600,000 a year over about a 18-year period, and we would really like to have public input from those that are affected by the opiate pandemic to come out and tell us what they feel would be a good use of those funds. We've got a pretty strong committee started. We meet monthly, and this is as with government, public engagement sessions are not only necessary, but a requirement. So May the 4th, 7 PM, the Willow Oak Room in Creedmoor, which is their community service building. We'll be having our final opiate advisory input session. So if you're free, please attend. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Karen. Commissioner Jimmy Gooch.
Just want to remind everybody that on Friday, the June 2nd, the Butner Citizens Committee is putting on the Butner Summer Festival Dance. This is formerly known as the Butner Chicken Picking Dance. They've had a name change, and then following Saturday, the 3rd, will be the annual Butner Summer Festival, which is again name change from Butner Chicken Picking. So, and if you wonder about the name change, just check social media. You can hear all you want to about it, both sides.
Thank you, Commissioner Gooch.
Are the chickens still running?
County Manager, thank you tonight for a excellent presentation of telling a story of where we've been and where we're going. I'd like to, for the board, thank every member of the staff that's here for all your hard work and effort that you put in that. Ms. Weichel, thank you for yeoman's work in regards to some of the other pay options and so forth. As the county manager stated, this is a one-step and two-step process in some regards, and that we are going to do everything we can as a board to not be back in the place that we are next year in regards to public safety pay, and we're going to work. And I challenge the board to challenge both Ms. Weichel and the county manager when we have our discussions, that we need to ask questions and we need to dig in and be very well versed in what we're doing, because this is going to have a big impact on our public safety and all of our employees. And I know they're prepared for that discussion, which is why I'm asking for it. So thank you. I'm encouraged by getting this location up to speed with full video and microphones and all the bells and whistles that we need for to enhance our facilities and capabilities here. I believe the county manager did video his presentation tonight, and that will become available sometime soon. So on behalf of the county commissioners, thank you, staff, and thank you for all your hard work. I also like to shout out to the city of Creedmoor. A couple of things that they're helping this board with in enhancement of services, and both for the county is to share on the grant writer. That's significant. That is a shared cost for somebody that can really serve both the county and the city of Creedmoor, in hopes that we can reach out and gain more grant funding to the betterment of both the municipality and the county. And we hope to reach out to other municipalities in the coming budget years to be able to get them and recruit them to be again in that process, because that's a process in which we can connect every city to a process with the county and hopefully work together to gain more funds for the grant funding. And again, Veteran Services being expanded in the city of Creedmoor, in which they provided an office in which we can use for our veterans there at the City Hall in the city of Creedmoor. So thank you, board, for tonight. Thank you for all your questions and things we've done tonight. And unless we have anything else by this board, we will not be going into closed session unless there is something this board wishes to discuss and I'm unaware of. Otherwise, I need a motion for adjournment. Hang on one second. Hang on one second. Hang on one second. I'm checking with the clerk. I don't want to be premature. So I do have a motion for adjournment.
To the county manager and assistant county, can we go shopping? Can we go shopping?
With that $2 that's left?
Can we go shopping?
I'll make the motion that we close the meeting.
Okay, do I have Ms. Hinman with the motion to adjourn? Do I have a second? Mr. Williford, a second. All in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attendance tonight.